Chaps, welcome back to SJMMA and happy Monday, because who doesn't love a Monday? Anyway, in today's video, I'm going to do some more matchmaking because, as I've said many a time, it's what I love to do. I think you guys like the fights that I make, so I'm going to be matchmaking some of the top prospects in the UFC today. Let's get straight into it. This video was heavily inspired by the recent UFC Vegas 100, and the cream of the crop on that card was Mr. Carlos Prates. One of the most impressive knockouts I've seen in a while for a number of reasons. First and foremost, the opponent, Neil Magny, is not going to win a UFC belt at this point. He was never particularly close to it, but as gatekeepers go, he's very good. But if you ask me, the most impressive thing about Mr. Carlos Prates is how little he has to actually put into a shot in order to do some serious damage. It was one of the blokes on the commentary over the weekend, I think it was Fitzgerald, who mentioned it. There's no wind-up in anything that he throws at all. And there are many reasons why that's very, very important, and it's a massive part of his game. The first one is it makes it a lot more kind of difficult for an opponent to actually see a shot coming, and also defensively. He's never really off balance. He never leaves himself in a position to either get countered on the feet or have somebody dive in on a single leg and take it down. He has the ability to keep balance and keep range while still doing massive damage. That's a really good skill. There are loads of different ways I think you can go with him next, but I kind of whittled it down into three. Either Gilbert Burns, the loser of Joaquin Buckley against Ian Gary, or Jeff Neal. I've given him Jeff Neal because I think a win over Neil Magny is a good win, but the guy we're going to get to in a minute beat Magny first, so I think he potentially earns a slightly more high profile slot, a slightly higher ranked spot. We'll get onto him in a minute. I think him against Jeff Neal is brilliant for the reason that I just said. Carlos Prates, because of how he throws his shots, is an incredibly difficult man to counter, and Jeff Neal is arguably one of the best counter punchers in the welterweight division. That clash of styles would be brilliant. It would be a great Apex main event. Jeff Neal against Carlos Prates. Sign me up. I somewhat alluded to Michael Morales in the previous entry, but now I'm going to talk about him and who I would match him up with next. Like I said, he's also knocked out Neil Magny in the first round. Not that long ago either, but I think because he got in there first, he deserves a slightly higher spot of the rankings. I think he should fight Gilbert Burns. Morales, I believe, is about number 12 in the rankings. Burns is number 8, coming off, it's either 2 or 3 back-to-back losses. I think it's 3 now. Burns is still a big name. I mean, if the UFC wanted maybe a Brazilian fight night main event, Gilbert Burns is a big name. He's incredibly popular everywhere in the world, especially in his home nation of Brazil. I'd like to see Mike over 5 rounds. I think he's at a point where he probably should fight over 5 rounds, and him and Gilbert Burns is a apt main event pretty much anywhere in the world. So that's what I would do. I don't think you get more hyped up UFC prospect at the moment than Shalaputin Magomedov. I mean, a double spinning back fist. I didn't even see that coming. I can tell you, Arman fucking Petrosian didn't see that coming because he's still on the octagon. He's still laying there. He's been sleeping this whole time. I'll promise you, people, he has. When I make these matchmaking videos, I try not to go off recent call-outs or like recent rumours that I've seen. I try to be authentic, but when I even heard, when the idea of Shara against MVP hit my ears, it's been in my mind ever since. I was dreaming about it last night. It was in me dream, I promise you, people. I'm not sure if it particularly comes across in me videos, beautiful people, but I came to MMA from striking. I've been boxing for a fair chunk of my life, and if I can put on a pure striking matchup like this, if there's any chance it could happen, I'm going to give it all the exposure I possibly can on my little platform and put it in a video like this. There are very few fights where I look at and I genuinely just go to myself, who the fuck knows what's going to happen in that one? This is one of those fights. You can't put two people as intriguing, creative, devastating on the feet in an octagon and not have at least one insane thing happen. It's just impossible. Where would you do this? Definitely on pay-per-view. I'm not sure if Shalaputin would fight in the UK. We love him in the UK. He's incredibly popular over here. We definitely have him, 100%. But wherever it is, even if it's in their back garden, as long as it's streamed on like Facebook, right? I'm there. Do you know what I mean? Let's move on. Next up, chaps, we're going to heavyweight, and another UK boy, Mick Parkin. I'm going to put him in the video, and I'm going to give him Taito Ivasa because a lot of you people know, if you just look at my channel, he is literally my profile picture. I love Tuivasa, but if he is going to fight again in the UFC, which if he's not already had his last chance, he's probably on it in his next fight, I'm just going to give him a UK guy and just see maybe a great win for Ty or maybe another British heavyweight in the rankings. Either way, I'm quite happy, to be honest. Mick Parkin's undefeated in the UFC. He comes from great stock. He's a part of that all big blokes, Aspinall gym in the north of England at the minute, which has obviously done him very good. He's quite interesting to watch, Parkin. For a heavyweight, he's technically brilliant. He's really, really good. All of his shots are thrown right. A lot of the heavyweights will just wing them, as we know. He's very good technically, but he's incredibly unathletic. He's probably one of the most unathletic men in the UFC. But he makes up for it by being quite smooth and relatively quick for it. Well, not quick, but he's not slow for a heavyweight. And like I've said, he's technically very good. Him and Ty will be trying to knock his block off. I think Mick will try and be a bit more smooth with it. Tuivasa could land and take him out. Or Mick could piece him up. Maybe even mix in some grappling. Who knows? But yeah. Tai Tuivasa versus Mick Parkin in the UK. Sign me up. Or even on the Australia card in February, maybe. Outside of Shara Bullet against MVP, I think in terms of the quality of the fight inside of the octagon and how fun it would be, this is probably my second favourite on the video. Gene Silver coming back down to featherweight to fight Calvin Kattar. Come on now. Calvin Kattar at one point was literally a fight away from competing for the featherweight title, but he got his block completely ripped up by Max Holloway. Now, he's not been on the greatest run since then either, which is unsurprising, I'm not going to lie. He's down to number 10. If he loses again, he's fighting for his ranking spot. But Gene Silver, it wasn't enough for old Gene Silver to knock the bloody hell out of Charles Jourdain. He said, fuck it. Do you know what? I'm going up to lightweight. Where is that massive chin fella? Where is Drew Dober? I'll have him too. Bang. See you later. I've heard a few people say he should stay at 155, and if you effectively mash up a guy like Drew Dober, I'm not surprised I'm hearing those calls, but for me, I think he should stay at featherweight, and if Calvin Kattar's sat there looking for a fight, I mean, bloody hell. Make it happen, people. If you know mixed martial arts, to any capacity, you will hear the idea of Gene Silver and Calvin Kattar fighting, and you may get a bit aroused, right? It's that good. It is that good. Do you know what I mean? Let's move on to the lightweights, and let's make a match for Fares Ziam, the Smile Killer, which when I first heard, I thought it was a bit of a dorky nickname, but it's kind of growing on me. I think it's alright. I mean, I'll tell you someone who's not alright, Matt Frivola, because that was nasty. That was a great knee. And you could argue he's probably the one on this video I've given maybe too much of a step up to, but I mean, Jalen Turner's lost 3 of his last 4. He's kind of clinging on to the back of the rankings at lightweight. I think Ziam's been very good recently. Obviously, on top of beating Matt Frivola, I was incredibly impressed. And when he beat Jai Herbert, because I rate Jai quite highly. So, him and Jalen Turner, they're both very long at 155. Jalen Turner's not a particularly fantastic grappler, as we know. He gets taken down quite a lot. And I don't think Ziam will potentially shoot that much if he does at all. It's definitely one of those matchups. I think they would both look at it and go, yeah, I'll have a bit of that. And I'll have a bit of it as well. That's why it's in the video. Let's crack on. In my opinion, the most interesting, exciting and explosive light heavyweight up-and-comer at the moment is Ibo Aslan. I was saying earlier about old Carlos Plates that there's no wind-up, it looks effortless. You can see how much Ibo Aslan can hurt you when he throws his punches because you can just feel the force of it through your eyes. It's mental. I'm going to give him Alonzo Menifield because... how can I put this? There comes a time in a mixed martial artist's life when people know you're not going to fight for or win a world title. And then you get knocked out twice in a row. And you're right on the edge of the rankings. I think he's just inside at number 15. Where you just have to give him somebody up and coming who's going to chin him and take his spot in the rankings. Sorry, Alonzo, my old son. It's how the sport works. So Aslan against Menifield is what I want to see. I kind of wanted an excuse to talk about Renier Derrida in this video, so I'm going to count him as a UFC prospect, which in the organisation he is. Of course, he's not an MMA prospect. He's already achieved an awful lot outside of the promotion, but he's a UFC prospect, and he beat GM3, as we know, again, at UFC Vegas 100, but it was a bit of a sluggy fight. It was a little bit like a Luke Rockhold Paulo Costa fight, where the standard is so much lower than what you would expect it to be, but it's still somewhat entertaining because it's so sloppy. It was a bit like that, to be honest. But, I mean, GM3 is the quintessential gatekeeper, as we know, and if I'm Renier Derrida, I'm looking up those like ranks up the 185-pound weight class, and I get to Albus Magomedov, and I think I'll have a bit of that. And if I'm a bus, I'm seeing a 2-weight 1 championship champion, I'm going, I'll have that on my record. Magomedov had an unnecessary jump up the rankings. It was around about the kind of time where it seemed like if you were in any way Russian or Dagestani or anything even adjacent to that. The UFC wanted you in main events and they wanted you up the rankings. It was kind of the in thing at that point. And he turned up to a 25-minute fight with Sean Strickland, a fantastic pressure boxer, with 6.5 minutes of cardio. And then he fought an unranked guy called Mr. Calparajo, who turned out to be quite good. So he's been alright since then. He beat Warley Alves and recently beat a very dangerous guy in Mr. Bruno Ferreira, who's very, very good, by the way. I think this kind of makes sense. If you win this fight, either of them are probably looking at a edge of the ranking sort of guy, and the loser has probably still got another fight or two left on their contract to try and turn it around. I think it makes sense. I'm a big fan of Mr. Farid Basharat. I thought he looked very good against very big and overweight and lazy in terms of not cutting the bloody weight Victor Hugo in his last fight. I think he should fight Chris Gutierrez, who interestingly enough was supposed to fight against his brother Javid, but that fight got called off. I think this one makes more sense. Gutierrez has been ranked relatively recently. He's fought the likes of Song Yadong and Pedro Munoz. He did win his last fight. The opponent wasn't brilliant, but he did win it, so fair play to him. It's just outside the rankings again. A lot of these fights are just like that, and I think if he can get a good win over somebody like a Gutierrez, he can look at maybe a Montel Jackson or, hey, Jose Aldo, why not? Who knows, right? Who knows in MMA? We don't. And the last prospect that I want to talk about in this video is another bloke who made his UFC debut on UFC Vegas 100, Mansour Abdul Malik. He's just a big ball of muscle and he's bloody explosive. He's now 7-0, 7 finishes. Looked brilliant on the Contender Series, looked brilliant against Dusan last Saturday night. I mean, we don't know what he'll go on to do in MMA, but he's made a bloody good start. And I know I said he was sleeping in the octagon in Abu Dhabi still, but somebody needs to wake up Mr. Arman Petrosian, because I think that's good in terms of a sophomore. Is it sophomore for second? I don't know. Fight for Abdul Malik, for me. My initial one, and the first name that came straight into my head, was a fight against Brad Tavares, who really is a flagstick of where you are at 185 pounds in the UFC, but I think there's overlap there. They both train at Extreme Couture, so I decided I'd avoid that, and I'd give him Arman, because as much as Arman has lost his last 2 fights, they were to decent opposition, and most recently, I think that crazy double back fist would have knocked anybody out. Do you know what I mean? So, if he loses against Arman, there's a massive gap in between Petrosian and Dusan. If he loses, he can kind of fill out there and try and get back in the win column and then build up. If he beats Arman, he's on a fast track up to those rankings. And he could be good enough for that. We'll wait and see. There is a very good chance that all 10 of the prospects that I've mentioned in this video have superb UFC careers. And there's also a chance at least half of them get chinned in their next fight and we never hear about them again. But that's the beauty of MMA. If you enjoyed this video, let me know down below. All your thoughts. Drop us a cheeky comment, even the negative ones. Love to have a little chat in the comments with you beautiful people. Take care, and I'll catch you very soon.